Grace and peace. I'm Brian Musser, the Baptist Campus Minister at Drexel University, and this is Peace and Power Christian Fellowship, the peace of Jesus Christ to change our lives, and the power of the Holy Spirit to change our world. We are continuing our study on the book of Revelation, Revelation Understood, and this is the third lesson, and we are in the second video of the third lesson, and we're looking at the churches that are in Revelation chapters 2 and chapter 3. We're on the second church, and that is the church at Smyrna, or Smyrna. Probably Smyrna might be better, and I'll say that from now on. Smyrna, and it is kind of in modern-day Turkey, around the city of Izmir. You can see in this picture some of the ruins with a large modern city in the background. So let's hear what John had to write to the city at Smyrna. So now, and to the angel of the church in Smyrna write, the words of the first and last who died and came to life. I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich, and the slander of those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are of the synagogue of Satan. Do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil is about to throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. So, Smyrna seems to be having problems with the Jewish residents of that city, and we're right at this time, as kind of explained in the introduction, right at this time where the church is separating from the Jewish synagogues. This happens over an extended period of time. For an extended period of time, the substantial portion of Christians in many of the churches gathered throughout the Roman Empire were of Jewish descent. And for the longest period of time, the Roman Empire looked on Christianity as just a subset of Judaism. But the Jewish population is starting to see that this is not just a part of Judaism. Christianity is something totally different, and they're starting to try to isolate the Christians from the rest of the Jewish folks. Now, it's interesting to note, and this is kind of a historical context that makes this more clear. Up until a certain point, Christianity was so connected to Judaism that every historical artifact we have from the early Christian church was found and located in Jewish neighborhoods. So geographically, the churches were right next to and in predominantly Jewish areas of these major cities. So not only are they maybe connected theologically and seen as a development within the religious sect of Judaism, but they're also connected geographically. Many of the early Christians lived among Jewish neighborhoods. The other ideas, and I don't think we get this, maybe at the time of this letter, in the 90s, in the mid-90s of the end of the first century, there are estimates of 40,000 Christians throughout the Roman Empire. 4 million Jews throughout the empire, in kind of an empire of 30 to 60 million people. So 40 million, let's say, is in the ballpark. That would mean there's 10% Jewish population, and then just like 0.1 or 0.01% Christian population. So the Jews at this time scattered throughout these cities definitely completely and totally dominate the Christians in population size. It's not even close. So when Jewish folks in a certain city want to make it clear that Christians aren't Jews, even though they're ethnically descended from Jews and theologically and religiously connected to Judaism, they're not Jewish. The Jewish folks can cause major problems for the Christians, especially when it comes to the worship of the emperor. So both Jews and Christians didn't want to worship the emperor. There was a Jewish exemption from worshiping the emperor in some places at some times, but that applied to Jews. If Christians were looked on by the Romans as a subset of Judaism, they fell under that exemption. If the Jews said, no, they're not us, there's something different, they no longer fell under that exemption, and then the Romans may actively start persecuting them until they worship the emperor, because they don't worship the emperor. So that's what's going on here. And it seems in Smyrna, there were, at least by the 2nd century, we have records of Jewish people in Smyrna specifically reporting Christians to the Roman authorities in order to have them arrested and persecuted. So this is what's developing. There's this Jewish population that is sicking the Roman authorities onto the Christians to just make sure that they aren't identified as Jewish. Now, a little historical note coming through on this as well. In Smyrna is the place of the execution of Polycarp, probably the most famous Christian martyr from the early church. The bishop of the church at Smyrna was executed there. We even have the date, February 23rd, 155 AD. Now, interestingly enough, there's a chance that Polycarp was in Smyrna when John wrote this letter. He may have even been pastor of the church. When he was martyred in AD 155, Polycarp testifies to serving Christ for 86 years. Now, we are not sure if that is a reference to his age or to the length of his service. But even if he used serving Christ as saying he has been alive for 86 years, that would still put him in Smyrna about 25 years old. Could have been the pastor at 25, maybe not, when John wrote the letter in the 90s. But if he served for 86 years in the role of the pastor, that means he one, he was about 100 when he died, and two, he had been serving as pastor in Smyrna when John wrote this letter. So this idea, this isn't John making stuff up. Persecution is coming to Smyrna, and we have documented evidence of it, not in the 90s, but soon after, where Christians are persecuted by Romans because they won't sacrifice to the emperor. The imperial cult gets to the point where you either sacrifice to the emperor or you have problems with the Roman Empire, and they are persecuted from that standpoint. That's coming. So John is writing to them to encourage them as this persecution is coming. He starts this address with the words of the first and the last who died and came to life, leaning on Jesus' resurrection, which is a reference to what the descriptions of Jesus in chapter 1. Fear not, I am the first and the last and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I have the keys of death and Hades. And then, so each of these letters has a specific reference back to chapter 1 in the description of Jesus. And that reference has something to do with what John is going to address in that specific church. And here it is, yeah, you might die sometime soon, but you're serving Jesus who conquered death. You're serving the Jesus who died and came back to life. So don't worry. Even though it might hurt, don't worry. And then the end of it, to him who conquers, I will give you the crown of life. And this is referenced to the 24 elders later in Revelation. And then to the one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. And back in 26, blessed is the Holy One who shares in the first resurrection. Over such the second death has no power, but they will be priests of God and of Christ, and they will reign with him 1,000 years. This is the second death, the lake of fire. So as we saw with Ephesus, we also see here with Smyrna the description of Jesus at the beginning of this address specifically to this church references back to chapter 1, the rewards, the crown of life, and the escape from the second death. have reference back farther on in Revelation. So these letters connect the book of Revelation together. And the specific reference are stuff that has direct application to what Smyrna is going through. They might be persecuted soon, but you serve the Jesus who conquered death, and you might die, but you will not experience the second death, which is hell, the lake of fire, or eternal separation from God. That's not going to happen to you. So as we're looking at this, the church in Smyrna is literally in a life and death struggle. We have later historical reports that Jews from Smyrna would purposely report on Christians to local Roman authorities. The description of Jesus as the one who overcame death, promising to save them from the second death, is designed to be explicitly encouraging for the church facing deadly persecution. So that's what John's writing to them. And Smyrna is one of the two churches that there's not a negative side to it. It's just this: you're about to face persecution. Here's some help to get you through. So some discussion questions. How does your belief in the afterlife affect your perspective on suffering here and now? Is persecution always harmful to a person's faith? Is it always helpful? Sometimes in Christianity, we think either way, that persecution can harm our faith or can help our faith. Let me know what you think about that. Have you ever met someone or a group of people that you would describe as poor but rich? Smyrna said, I know your poverty, but you are rich. John specifically talks about, even though they're poor, they're rich. Have you met somebody like that? I would love to hear your responses to these questions. Drop down in the comment section and respond appropriately, and I will get back to you. As always, there are two ways to join this conversation: in person Sunday nights at 5 p.m. in the JEMIC, and these weekly wrap-ups on YouTube and WordPress. Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, WordPress, YouTube, I'm on those social media outlets. Like, subscribe, and follow as appropriate. Those links are in the description below. I would love to engage with you and have a conversation with you on those apps as well. Enjoyed talking with you. Hopefully it continues real soon.